The story begins with a girl calling out to Ima about the posted class list. Distracted, she bumps into the protagonist, Ijima Yusutaka. Although he initially finds her attractive, his impression sours immediately based on her reaction. Following this rocky start to their freshman year, the tension continues in the classroom. During a lecture on greenhouse gas emissions, Yusutaka notices that she does not have her reference book. Despite never having spoken to her before, he decides to offer help, hoping to be polite. However, when he tries to point out the page, Ima shoots him a glare intense enough to make him blush, followed by a cold refusal. To his humiliation, she immediately asks another classmate for the same favor. As other students laugh at the awkward interaction, he vows never to deal with her again. Time passes rapidly, and before he knows it, they are seniors. Yusutaka walks down the corridor, holding a career survey, feeling like the years have flashed by. Beside him is Saito Katsuya, his hopeless friend since middle school. When asked about his future plans, Katsuya deflects with jokes about anime subculture, eventually admitting he plans to attend a college with strong hobbyist clubs. Their conversation shifts to the upcoming summer training camp. Katsuya notes that since their second-year trip was skipped, this event is their last chance for memory-making, despite the torture of having no internet access. Just then, they spot a group of girls nearby. Yusutaka overhears Emma and her friend Juri discussing matching loungewear they bought on sale for the trip. Realizing she is definitely going to the camp, he lets out a heavy sigh. Katsuya immediately teases him for staring at Emma, noting her flashy appearance and popularity on campus. Yusutaka strongly denies any romantic thoughts, urging his friend to stop speculating. Putting the jokes aside, he wonders aloud why someone like her chose the science track. Katsuya suggests her choice likely involves Kimura, a guy rumored to have dated her in the past. Reflecting on the social hierarchy, Yasutaka recalls how Kimura was the face of a band during the cultural festival, though the group seems to have disbanded since they are rarely seen together anymore. Meanwhile, Yasutaka feels stuck in the bottom tier of the class. Because he is constantly hanging out with Katsuya, a known otaku, the rest of the school assumes he shares the same hobbies. He accepts that he is not cool, reasoning that a sudden makeover would only invite gossip rather than admiration. Looking at his parents' average but stable marriage, he decides he does not need a flashy, dramatic romance or the sweat and tears of youth. Content to wait for adulthood for a relationship, he resolves to focus entirely on his exams. The summer camp begins with a grueling schedule, 4 days and 3 nights involving 8 hours of study daily across 5 core subjects. By the 3rd day, the intensity is palpable. During a study session, a classmate leans in and invites Yasutaka to sneak into the girls' rooms that night. He immediately rejects the idea, convinced such a scheme will end in disaster and insisting he needs to study. However, focusing proves impossible as he watches couples flirting openly in the study hall. Frustrated by the atmosphere, he retreats to a different classroom, only to stumble upon a raucous boys' party in full swing. Katsuya waves him over, dismissing Yasutaka's concern about the illicit nature of their gathering. The room is a mix of cheering and crying, creating absolute chaos. Katsuya explains the source of the drama. A student named Sasaki confessed to Mochida and was promptly rejected. Yasutaka cynically observes that the two had never even spoken, calling it a bold but foolish move to aim for a girl so far out of his league. His friends readily agree, admitting they would struggle to even start a conversation with someone of that status. The group eventually shifts their discussion to university plans and their future, chatting until they realize they have completely run out of snacks and drinks. Back at the party, someone suggests settling, who makes the next supply run via rock, paper, scissors. Yasutaka loses the match and finds himself walking alone to the convenience store. On the return trip, he grumbles about the distance and the lack of streetlights, though he admits to himself that he secretly wanted a break from the noise. He questions why his peers get so worked up over confessions and relationships when they should be worrying about exams. His internal monologue is interrupted when he spots a figure sitting on the dark roadside. Realizing it is Emma, he initially hesitates, assuming she will just ignore him or respond coldly if he tries to help. He considers walking past her to avoid the awkwardness, but a sideways glance reveals she is crying. Unable to leave her there, he decides to approach her directly. Upon asking if she is okay, she reveals that her sandal strap has snapped. Seeing the damage, Yasutaka asks if she can still walk, but she curtly shakes her head. He crouches down to assess the situation, but Emma immediately recoils, defensively refusing a piggyback ride before he even offers one. Yasutaka quickly clarifies that he had no intention of carrying her, as that would be physically impossible for him given the distance. Instead, he takes off his own shoes and offers them to her, explaining that since they are large, they won't irritate her blisters. To his surprise, she accepts the gesture and puts them on. Worried that a girl walking alone at night might attract creeps, he takes her bag to lighten her load and begins walking back in just his socks. As he marches ahead, annoyed that she hasn't even thanked him yet, Ima calls out from behind, complaining that he is walking too fast. Yasutaka slows his pace, waiting for her to catch up. Ima asks if he was sent on this errand by the bosses of his group, implying he might be getting bullied. He internally scoffs at the idea and clarifies that he simply lost a game of rock, paper, scissors. Ima empathizes, admitting she is in the same boat. She lost a test of courage game against her friends, Mio and Juri, which is why she is out wandering alone. Yasutaka privately notes how dangerous that is, given the late hour. He attempts to bring up the earlier drama involving Sasaki, but she interrupts, misinterpreting his train of thought. She reveals that Mio is secretly dating a college guy from back home and swears him to secrecy. Yasutaka is baffled as to why she would trust him with such sensitive information, feeling a bit unsettled by the sudden intimacy. The conversation then drifts to complaints about sleep deprivation, the hard futons at the camp, and how confusing the math lecture on exponentials was. Eventually, they fall into silence until they reach the school. Upon their arrival, Juri rushes out, frantic with worry because Emma had been gone so long without her phone. Yasutaka watches the reunion, noting their close bond, and hands Emma's bag back to her. She seems on the verge of thanking him, but Juri loudly hurries her away before she can get the words out. Left alone, he looks down at his ruined socks and decides to just toss them in the trash later. He returns to the classroom, where Katsuya comments on his hour-long absence. The party is winding down, with many boys already asleep, so Yasutaka avoids getting chewed out. He hands over the drinks, and they share a quiet toast. His mind wanders back to Ima's unguarded expressions, causing him to smile involuntarily. Katsuya calls the look creepy, but Yasutaka brushes him off. He then asks to borrow Katsuya's flip-flops for the next day, lying that he stepped in a puddle and ruined his shoes. His friend sympathizes with the rough night, but Yasutaka smiles, knowing the truth. He reflects that until today, he and Emma were completely irrelevant to each other, but that has finally changed. The next day, Emma is busy baking in the kitchen when her sister arrives home. Emma greets her warmly, taking her bag and noting that she must be tired. Her sister compliments the delicious smell filling the house, and Emma reveals she has baked cookies. However, when her sister asks if the training camp was fun, Ima's expression immediately darkens as traumatic memories from the trip resurface. In a flashback to the camp, the girls are having a lively time in their room until they decide to play a traditional game of rock, paper, scissors to determine who has to go on a supply run. Ima loses the game and finds herself walking alone to the convenience store, muttering complaints about her bad luck. Her solitude is interrupted when a male student approaches her, calling her name familiarly. Ima tries to ignore him, continuing to walk, but he follows her, insisting on chatting. She vaguely recognizes him as a former committee member who used to stare at her during their second year. He presses on, claiming it is dangerous for her to be out alone and offering to walk with her. Although she feels uncomfortable, she worries it would be rude to outright ignore a former classmate. Taking her silence for compliance, the boy's behavior escalates. He comments on how cute she looks without makeup before suddenly grabbing her in an unwanted embrace. Terrified, she shoves him away and sprints into the darkness, hiding behind a tree until he gives up searching. Once the path is clear, she tries to walk back, but her sandal strap snaps, leaving her stranded and in tears. Back in the present, Ima shakes off the heavy memory. Her sister, sensing the shift in mood, suggests they sit down for tea. As they eat the cookies, her sister gently encourages her to remember the good parts of the trip. Ima's gaze drifts to a pair of men's shoes drying nearby. She recalls how Yasutaka found her crying on the roadside and helped her when she was at her lowest. Realizing she never thanked him or returned his shoes, a small smile touches her lips, which her sister notices with relief. Meanwhile, at Yasutaka's house, he returns home only to be immediately put to work. Despite his protests that he needs to study for exams, his mom insists he cook the rice, citing the house rule: those who do not work, do not eat. Frustrated, he heads to the kitchen. Moments later, the doorbell rings. Hearing his mom chatting with a girl at the door, Yasutaka assumes it is a scam and decides to ignore it. However, his mom calls out to him, saying his friend from school is here. Confused, he walks to the entryway and is shocked to find Ima standing there, holding out a shopping bag containing his cleaned shoes. She hands over the bag containing his shoes, assuring him she washed them. Yasutaka points out she could have waited until after summer break to return them, but she insists that keeping a boy's shoes at her place felt too awkward. She then presents a second, smaller bag. Confused, he opens it to find homemade cookies. Ima quickly downplays the gesture, claiming they were cheap to make and she just had extra ingredients, implying it is merely a formal thank you gift rather than anything romantic. However, he is genuinely moved, noting he has never received homemade sweets before. He also privately observes how different and mature she looks in her casual clothes compared to her school uniform. As she turns to leave, he abruptly stops her. Moments later, he reappears with his bicycle, claiming he has an errand to run and knows a shortcut, though it is clearly an excuse to walk her home. As they walk, silence stretches between them. Yasutaka struggles to find a conversation starter, worrying that anything he says might make him sound like a creep, though he can't help noticing how pleasant she smells. Ima eventually breaks the ice, pointing out his glasses. He explains that these are actually his home glasses, with a weaker prescription. He wears a different pair at school. Ima bluntly remarks that these look much better, admitting she assumed he was an intense otaku based on his vibe at school. He quickly corrects her misconception, clarifying that he doesn't actually share those hobbies. Surprised, she asks why he spends so much time with Katsuya then. Yasutaka defends his friend, explaining that despite Katsuya's obsessions, he is a genuinely good guy who is knowledgeable and loyal, even bringing him notes when he was out sick. Emma nods, accepting that Katsuya is actually a good person, prompting Yasutaka to mentally thank his friend for boosting his social stock. The conversation shifts to names, with Emma apologizing for misreading his earlier. Yasutaka says this happens a lot because his name uses a strange mix of two different Japanese reading styles. He jokes that it's his parents' fault for choosing it that way. Feigning ignorance, he asks for her first name again. When she replies with Emma, he compliments it as a nice balance between flashy and plain. She explains she was named after a foreign actress, which leads Yasutaka to realize her slightly mixed features match the name perfectly. Suddenly, her phone buzzes. She mentions checking the class roster earlier and noticing he only had a landline listed. Yasutaka explains that upon entering high school, his parents gave him a choice between a smartphone or a computer. He chose the latter. Ima is baffled, unable to imagine life without a phone, and asks what could possibly be so important about a computer. He reveals that he uses it for programming, participating in contests where he can win prize money. Emma immediately labels this as serious otaku behavior. When Yasutaka tries to defend himself by pointing out that programming is part of the elementary school curriculum now, she simply laughs, telling him that such a logical defense is precisely what an otaku would say. Defeated by her logic, he falls silent. Ima continues to press the issue, suggesting that Yasutaka could at least get a phone on a family plan. He finds her persistence puzzling, wondering if perhaps her parents work for a cellular company. Their debate is interrupted when they spot an elderly woman looking distressed nearby. Emma immediately recognizes her as a local granny and rushes over to check on her. The woman declares that she missed her bus and is in a rush, but there are no taxis in sight. Yasutaka points out that taking a cab in this area is nearly impossible and suggests heading to the station. However, Ima takes charge, pulling out her smartphone to use a ride-sharing app, a trick her mother taught her for emergencies. Watching Ima comfort the woman until the car arrives, Yasutaka is impressed. He realizes that beneath her cool exterior, she possesses a genuinely caring side. Once the car picks the woman up, Ima immediately uses the victory to reiterate her point: he needs a smartphone. Yasutaka remains stubborn, insisting he will wait until college to get one. When Emma calls him a contrarian, he shrugs it off with a self-deprecating remark, claiming he doesn't need a phone right now because he isn't cute or popular like her. To his surprise, Emma gasps and looks away, abruptly blaming the summer heat for her flushed face. He is left confused, wondering if he said something to offend her. They eventually reach the station and part ways. Riding his bicycle home, Yasutaka reflects on the surreal experience. He finds it hard to believe he just walked and talked so naturally with a girl who seems completely out of his league. It felt like a dream. Back in his room, he announces his return and sits on his bed with the bag of cookies Ima gave him. Taking a bite, he confirms that her earlier claim was no lie. They really are delicious. After summer break, Katsuya greets Yasuo, asking if he looks any different after the summer break. Yasutaka studies him for a moment before dismissing the idea, joking that usually only the guys who quit the baseball team undergo drastic changes during the holidays. However, their conversation is cut short by a commotion. Ima enters the classroom sporting a new dark hairstyle, immediately drawing the attention of every boy in the room. One male student confidently approaches her, complimenting her new look and claiming she is exactly his type. Yusutaka is amazed by the guy's audacity, but Ima simply stares at him blankly, asking who he is. Crushed, the boy reveals he is Agusa from the baseball team. His hair has grown out from his previous buzz cut, making him unrecognizable. Juri winces at the brutal rejection, while Yusutaka silently agrees that it was a rough moment for the guy. Despite the chaos, he finds himself thinking, Ama looks cute. He glances her way, and she looks back, a subtle exchange that Juri catches immediately. When pressed, Ama denies looking at anyone. Meanwhile, Katsuya tries to discuss the season's anime lineup, but realizes his friend is barely listening. Smirking, he invites Yusutaka to their usual burger place after cram school for a serious talk. Later that evening, Yusutaka waits at the cafe, wondering why the invitation felt so formal. Katsuya arrives wearing a triumphant smile, but he is not alone. A girl is standing beside him. Yusutaka stands up in shock as the girl confirms his identity. He stammers, unable to believe that his otaku friend has managed to get a girlfriend. Katsuya explains that they met while lining up for a summer event. The girl had started feeling unwell, and Katsuya, always prepared, offered her medicine and a drink. Yusutaka asks since when he became so thoughtful, to which Katsuya replies that he always brings supplies to events. It was simply good timing. They ended up talking, exchanged numbers, and discovered they lived in the same neighborhood. As they settle in to enjoy their drinks, our lad listens to the story, feeling a mix of amazement and hesitation. Yasutaka stands up to leave the burger cafe early, making a polite excuse about having things to do, so he doesn't intrude on the new couple. Katsuya's girlfriend kindly suggests they all grab food together sometime, and Yasutaka agrees before exiting. As he walks away, he spots them holding hands through the window. He feels a moment of genuine happiness for his friend, realizing that even an otaku can find romantic success if he is bold enough. However, as he heads toward the station, his mood sours. He has a long wait for his train, giving him ample time to dwell on his own life. He feels pathetic for studying so hard like a good little test taker, only to receive terrible practice exam scores. He spirals into depression, feeling boring and unremarkable compared to his friend. Just as his frustration peaks, a hand slaps his back, startling him. He spins around to find Emma, who immediately comments on his gloomy expression. She teases him, claiming that looking so depressed makes him seem even more like a stereotypical otaku, and playfully taps his hand, telling him to straighten up. She asks why he is alone, wondering where Katsuya is since she saw him earlier. Yasutaka is briefly annoyed that people treat them as a package deal, but eventually admits that his friend is currently on a date with a girlfriend. Ima is stunned by the news. She quickly bursts into laughter, teasing him about being dumped by his best friend and feeling left behind now that Katsuya is in a relationship. As she loudly sympathizes with how sad his situation is, Yasutaka hurriedly shushes her to avoid a scene. An awkward silence settles between them until the train finally arrives. Emma steps inside and gestures for him to follow. He boards the train, internally surprised that she not only approached him, but now seems intent on commuting home together. As the train begins to move, Yasutaka finds himself sitting right next to Emma. He feels a bit self-conscious, noting that despite plenty of empty seats, she chose the one beside him. He worries about schoolmates seeing them, but Emma interrupts his thoughts by asking about his cram school schedule. He reveals he attends classes on Wednesdays and Saturdays. When she asks for the location, he tells her he goes to the Yushin school. Emma realizes this explains why they never see each other. She usually shops near the east exit, while his school is on the west side. Yasutaka is privately surprised that a flashy girl like her attends cram school at all. The conversation inevitably circles back to the phone issue. Emma once again urges him to buy one, even offering to teach him how to use it. Yasutaka, feeling pressured, asks if she has a family member working for a phone company. Emma is taken aback by the sudden question, but admits her sister works for an affiliate, though she insists that isn't the reason she is asking. Yasutaka then changes the subject, pointing out her new hairstyle. Emma's face lights up at the observation. She explains that she changed it hoping the style would be more popular. Yasutaka is baffled, thinking she is already plenty popular, and wondering how greedy one can be. But aloud he simply agrees that it looks good and that everyone else would think so too. Emma falls silent at his generic compliment. To bridge the gap, Yasutaka mentions that he looked up the actress she was named after, Emmanuelle Béard. He gushes about her older films, specifically noting how shockingly cute and angelic she was in a certain role, and tells Ima that she really does resemble the actress. Ima remains quiet, eventually asking if people ever call him an airhead because he says such flattering things so casually without realizing their impact. Yasutaka denies being spacey, missing her point entirely. The next day, Emma wakes up around noon. After eating brunch and washing the dishes, she decides to chill at home since her family is out. However, Yasutaka's words about the actress haunt her thoughts. She finds the movie he mentioned, Date with an Angel, on a streaming service and starts watching it. Seeing the actress on screen, Emma is flustered, thinking Yasutaka must be blind or have the wrong prescription to compare her to someone so adorable. She hugs a plushie on the sofa, blushing as she replays his compliments in her mind. She admits to herself that she doesn't usually try to impress boys, but this time, she changed her hairstyle to look neater because she thought it might make her seem more approachable to him. She feels disappointed when he only says that everyone else would probably like her hair instead of giving her a personal compliment. She also realizes that she doesn't actually want him to get a phone because of her sister's job. The real reason is that she wants to stay in contact with him. After she drops her phone and checks it for cracks, she thinks about how useful it is, but it still can't tell her what she wants to know most, how he truly feels about her. Determined to change that, she stands up and smiles. Since they both go to cram school on Wednesdays, she knows she'll see him again soon, almost like it's a planned date. On Wednesday, Yasutaka is waiting at the station when Ima suddenly appears, asking if he ever checks a mirror. He is shocked to see her, and she teases him about his bedhead sticking up wildly. He wonders if this is truly a coincidence, as he has run into her at the station after cram school multiple times now. While people say things happen in threes, these frequent encounters are beginning to feel less like chance and more like a pattern. The following week, Yasutaka rushes to the station in a panic because his class went overtime. He assumes he has missed the train but stops short when he sees Ima sitting on a bench, clearly waiting. She looks annoyed, reminiscent of her cold demeanor from their first year. When he approaches, she immediately scolds him for being late. Yasutaka explains the delay but remains confused, privately noting that they never actually made plans to meet. Ima gestures for him to sit beside her. She notices his worn-out shoes, likely the ones he walked home in that night, and asks if he frequently wears them. He admits they need replacing soon. Just then, the train arrives. They board and sit together. Yasutaka wonders why she chooses to ride with him when friends always surround her at school. To break the silence, Emma brings up the ball game tournament scheduled for the day after tomorrow. Yasutaka admits he completely forgot about it, grumbling that between the spring sports festival and this autumn event, there are too many athletic obligations. She laughs and asks if he is in Team A, the competitive tier, or Team B. Knowing his limits, he straightforwardly answers Team B. Emma teases him, asking if he is bad at sports. He clarifies that while he isn't terrible at everything, he specifically struggles with ball games. She mentions that the girls are all on one large team and invites him to come cheer for them if he has time. Yasutaka is skeptical, convinced that the other female classmates would not want a gloomy guy like him watching. Emma immediately corrects him, stating that he is the one putting up walls. In reality, the class would be happy to be friends with him if he just let them in. Ima insists that Yasutaka is completely unaware of how he is perceived by the female classmates. She explains that because he only ever hangs out with Katsuya and never interacts with the girls, he gives off an aura that suggests he hates them. Consequently, the girls feel intimidated and scared to approach him, which explains his isolation. Yasutaka is frustrated by this revelation, but admits it makes sense. He reflects on how he has viewed Emma for the past 2 years, assuming she brushed him off, and realizes he might need to change his perspective. His thoughts are interrupted when Emma playfully hits his hand, demanding that he start fixing this reputation by coming to cheer for the girls' team. She refuses to let him off the hook until he loudly confirms his promise. The day of the ball game tournament arrives, and the atmosphere is electric. Yasutaka and Katsuya participate in the football match for the boys' team. Despite Katsuya's skepticism and their plan to just take it easy, they surprisingly manage to secure a victory. Yasutaka is in disbelief that they actually won, though Katsuya cynically notes that their contribution was minimal and the opposing team just lacked motivation. After the match, Yasutaka excuses himself to buy a drink, intending to head over to the basketball court later to fulfill his promise to Emma. Near the convenience store, he spots a group of boys from another class lounging around. They are loudly bragging about their relationships and making immature jokes about spending extra time studying with their girlfriends. Yasutaka is disgusted by their vulgar conversation and tries to ignore them, but his ears perk up when the topic shifts. The boys begin discussing who they want to date next. One of them suggests Ema from Class F, noting that she is currently single and looks especially attractive with her new hairstyle. Yasutaka isn't surprised to hear her name, given her popularity. However, the mood shifts when another boy rudely refers to her as Kimura's ex, bringing up the rumor that she once dated the popular student, Kimura. Hearing them talk about her in such a disrespectful way makes Yasutaka furious. He is less concerned with the confirmation of her past relationship and more enraged by the sheer disrespect in their words. The group continues their crude discussion. One boy says he might try asking her out, while another rudely comments that he would rather date someone without any past relationships. Yasutaka, standing nearby, boils with silent indignation. He is disgusted by the way they mention girls, thinking to himself that people should never be described or judged like products. Yet he feels pathetic for staying silent, knowing they likely assume a gloomy guy like him won't spread rumors or do anything about it. The scene shifts to the second round of the football tournament. The atmosphere is tense as Class F's Team B prepares to face Class G's Team A. Yasutaka lines up with his teammates, and during the pre-game handshakes, he finds himself face-to-face with Kimura. Even Yasutaka has to admit the guy exudes a natural coolness. Kimura rallies his squad, urging Class G to do their best. As the match progresses, Yasutaka manages to gain control of a loose ball and attempts to direct it toward the goal. However, Kimura intercepts him with ease, stealing the ball and immediately countering to rally his own team. In the end, Yasutaka's team suffers a defeat. Walking off the field, he spirals into self-blame, wondering if the outcome would have been different had he not lost possession, though he realizes they likely would have lost on penalties anyway. He begrudgingly respects Kimura's talent, acknowledging that the guy is tall, athletic, and handsome, exactly the caliber of person Emma would have dated. Trying to shake off the loss, Yasutaka decides to head back to the convenience store to cool off. Suddenly, his internal monologue is cut short when he notices a ball hurtling down toward him from above, causing him to freeze in shock. Yasutaka realizes the stray ball is hurtling toward a group of nearby children. Shouting a warning, he instinctively throws himself in the ball's path to protect them. The impact strikes him squarely in the head, knocking him to the ground. The terrified children circle him, asking if he is okay and calling for a teacher. Kimura immediately rushes over, taking charge of the situation. He tells the kids to calm down and insists on carrying Yasutaka to the nurse's office himself. Despite being in the middle of a match, Kimura lifts the unconscious Yasutaka onto his back, reassuring the kids that he has the situation under control. Yasutaka, fading in and out of consciousness, vaguely registers the comforting voice of his rival. Later, he wakes up in the nurse's office as the sun is setting. The nurse checks his condition, noting that he was out cold for quite a while, likely due to exhaustion from studying late as a senior. She warns him that while it is probably just a mild concussion, he should go to the hospital if he feels nauseous. As the nurse prepares to close up for the evening, Yasutaka realizes his glasses are missing. His vision is completely blurred, making navigation difficult. He stumbles through the corridors until he reaches his classroom, 3F. Squinting at the blackboard, he sees a celebratory message written in large chalk letters, Champions. He smiles, realizing that Class F's Team A must have beaten Class G in the finals. On his desk, he finds a note left by Katsuya, asking if he is okay and letting him know the class is at the after-party. Yasutaka figures the party will be over by the time he arrives, so he prioritizes finding his glasses instead. Just then, a voice calls out from behind him. He turns around, squinting through the blur, and is shocked to realize it is Ema. She approaches Yasutaka and hands him his missing glasses, explaining that she retrieved them from Shin. He thanks her but immediately latches onto the nickname, realizing she is referring to Kimura with a level of familiarity that implies a close bond. She also hands him a boxed lunch, correctly guessing that he skipped eating due to his injury. When he offers to pay her back, she refuses, insisting that this settles the debt she owes him from the night he lent her his shoes. As he eats, Yasutaka asks about the class after-party. Ema admits she bailed halfway through to come check on him. She fills him in on the sports results, playfully guilt-tripping him by saying the girls made the semi-finals but lost specifically because he didn't show up to cheer. He apologizes sincerely, but she softens, acknowledging that his injury made it impossible. She mentions that Kimura told her the truth about the accident. Yasutaka didn't just get hit, he deliberately moved into the ball's path to protect the kids. While she calls his actions reckless and exasperating, asking why he couldn't have just dodged, her tone suggests concern rather than anger. Yasutaka defends Kimura, calling him a genuinely cool and good guy. Seeing an opening, he decides to satisfy his curiosity and asks Emma why she and Kimura broke up. Emma reacts with explosive shock, shouting that they can't break up because they never dated in the first place. Yasutaka is stunned, pointing out how often they were seen together earlier in the year. Emma sighs, complaining that otakus always jump to conclusions based on proximity. She explains the reality. Their mothers were classmates and best friends, so she and Kimura grew up as neighbors and childhood friends. Yasutaka feels foolish, realizing he projected a standard romance trope onto them. Emma then drops the final bombshell. The reason Kimura was hanging around her so much wasn't because he was interested in her. He has been in love with her older sister Risa since they were kids. After running into Risa again recently, Kimura had been pestering Emma constantly just to get updates on her sister. Yasutaka pieces together the situation. Kimura likely knew about the rumors regarding him and Emma, but chose not to deny them, using the gossip as a convenient shield to keep other girls from approaching him. Yasutaka concludes that being popular is a massive hassle. Emma confirms that once Kimura finally worked up the courage to approach her sister directly before the summer, he stopped pestering Emma for information entirely. While Emma seems unbothered, Yasutaka feels indignant on her behalf. He worries that she was used as a convenient tool by her childhood friend. A darker thought crosses his mind. What if she secretly liked Kimura but is now seeing him interested in her sister? Unable to contain the thought, he bluntly asks her if she ever liked Kimura romantically. Emma freezes, countering with a question of her own. Why is he asking? Yasutaka panics internally, unable to find a logical answer for his jealousy. Before the awkwardness can peak, Emma's phone buzzes with a message from a friend, signaling she needs to leave. However, before stepping out, she pauses to clarify the situation firmly one last time. She insists there was never anything between her and Kimura, and she finds it annoying when people assume otherwise. Yasutaka takes the moment to sincerely thank her for the glasses and the lunch, apologizing once more for missing her match. He emphasizes that he truly intended to be there. Emma softens, accepting his apology. She warns him to be careful with his head injury, mentioning that everyone in the class was worried about him. With that, she closes the door. Yasutaka is left standing alone in the silent classroom. Unbeknownst to him, as Emma walks down the corridor, her face is flushed red, revealing that his concern affected her more than she let on. The following day on the train, Emma points out a poster for the local geography research club and asks Yasutaka about it, calling it super risky looking. Yasutaka explains that it is actually a legitimate club dedicated to researching the area's history and industry. Emma admits she has never heard of it and questions if it even really exists. Yasutaka confirms it does, revealing he used to be a member and that they even presented at the club fair during freshman year, though Emma clearly doesn't remember. He notes that seniors can voluntarily participate in the upcoming Culture Fest this year, so he decided to help out since the club has fewer than 10 members. As he speaks, he realizes Emma is listening intently, which is unusual. He wonders if her phone battery is dead, forcing her to pay attention to him. He explains their exhibit involves interviewing local notables and displaying posters, which Emma laughs at, calling it very plain. However, when Yasutaka reveals they managed to get Chiba-kun to appear, her attitude shifts instantly. Emma shouts in excitement, revealing she actually loves the mascot. Yasutaka explains that an alumnus hooked them up with the suit, which a junior member will wear to hype up the booth. Emma blushes, thinking about how cute the red dog-like character is. Yasutaka then asks what club she is in. Emma reveals she isn't in any, despite being scouted by seniors in her first year to be a manager. She turned them down, claiming she isn't the type to take care of people. Yasutaka tries to imagine Emma managing a team and accidentally lets out a laugh, earning a scolding for being rude. Just then, a voice calls out to Emma. It is a girl named Kamiko, an old friend from elementary and middle school. The two catch up, with Kamiko lamenting about her endless remedial classes while Emma mentions heading home from cram school. Yasutaka, not wanting to intrude on their reunion, stands up to offer his seat and move away. However, Emma stops him, offering to hold his bag instead. Kamiko looks between them, clearly wondering about their relationship status. Emma quickly introduces Yasutaka as just a classmate from high school. Kamiko introduces herself as Isogai Kamiko, explaining that her name uses the character for seashell, and confirms she has known Emma since they were kids. Yasutaka is taken aback by Kamiko's energy, realizing it has been ages since a girl other than his family or Emma has spoken to him. Suddenly, Kamiko points to a keychain on his bag and asks if he is a fan of the band Skosho. Yasutaka lights up instantly, amazed that she recognized the merchandise of the up-and-coming rock band he is currently obsessed with. He wonders if she is psychic, as the group is somewhat niche. Kamiko reveals she loves them too, and correctly identifies the keychain as tour merchandise from their last concert. Yasutaka is thrilled to finally meet someone who notices these details, admitting he actually wanted the t-shirt, but it sold out. Emma, feeling completely left out of the loop, interrupts to ask what they are talking about. Kumiko is surprised Ima doesn't know the band, and tries to explain their appeal, quoting some of their lyrics. Yasutaka privately notes that while Skosho has a strong cult following among music fans, they are probably too artsy for a general crowd. The two fans continue to bond, ignoring Ima. They discuss the struggle of getting tickets, with Yasutaka explaining he won a web presale lottery to avoid the insane resale prices. They exchange contact information to keep talking about music. Yasutaka eventually notices Ima sitting in stony silence. When he asks what is wrong, she sternly replies, "Nothing." He assumes she is simply sulking because she isn't used to being the third wheel. Kumiko tries to include her by showing photos of the band members, insisting they are good-looking. Our lad doubts Ima would be interested. After all, he thinks, she probably goes for the bold, confident type rather than shy, artsy musicians. Later at home, Yasutaka burns a copy of the band's concert onto a DVD. He decides that giving her a copy is less hassle than lending the original and having to meet up again to get it back. He drafts a formal email to Kumiko, identifying himself as the guy from the train and asking when and where she would like to meet to receive the promised DVD. He hits send, feeling a rare excitement about connecting with a fellow fan. To his surprise, a reply comes through almost immediately. He opens the message, but the content leaves him completely amazed. The next day, Yasutaka and Emma are the last students left in the classroom, finishing their cleaning duties. Breaking the silence for the first time on campus since their freshman year, Yasutaka asks her for Kumiko's email address. He explains that the address he currently has keeps bouncing back, likely due to a spelling error. Emma acts hesitant, evasively claiming she cannot give out personal information. When he suggests she simply pass the DVD to Kumiko for him, Emma refuses that as well, telling him to do it himself. Yasutaka argues that he cannot rely on fate to bump into her friend again. When Emma suggests that perhaps Kumiko gave him a fake address on purpose, Yasutaka dismisses the idea, reasoning that a fan asking for a DVD wouldn't tell a dumb lie. Seeing her stubbornness, he teasingly asks if she is perhaps jealous. Emma shouts in denial, but a blush betrays her anger. He gently points out that Kumiko is likely looking forward to the concert footage, so she shouldn't be mean about it. Before she can respond, a group of girls interrupts, calling Emma away. She leaves immediately, leaving Yasutaka to finish cleaning alone. He sighs, realizing that talking to her at school is like navigating a minefield. He worries about how to get the DVD to Kumiko without lurking around her neighborhood like a creep. However, when he opens his shoe locker to leave, he discovers a slip of paper inside. It contains the correct email address. Yasutaka smiles, realizing that despite her attitude, Emma decided to help him after all, though he wishes she had just been honest from the start. Later at home, he sends a test message to the new address. Kumiko replies immediately, explaining that his previous emails weren't coming through. They quickly arrange a meeting, as she wants to watch the concert footage as soon as possible. Since her school is far away and weekdays are busy, they agree to meet on Saturday at 3 p.m. in front of the owl-shaped police box near Chiba Station. Kumiko playfully adds a LOL to her message, asking what she should wear for their first date. Yasutaka is startled by the joke, noting that Emma would never crack a joke like that, even for money. He keeps his reply safe, telling her to just dress normally. On Wednesday, Yasutaka waits at the station as usual, but Emma does not show up. He waits for a long time before finally accepting that she isn't coming. He reminds himself that they never actually promised to meet. They just happened to coincide recently. Disappointed, he boards the train alone. Saturday arrives. Yasutaka stands by the owl police box, checking the time. He briefly indulges in the idea of this being a date before dismissing it as ridiculous. Suddenly, he spots a girl with long hair and his heart jumps. Thinking it is Emma, he quickly realizes it is a stranger and chides himself for hallucinating. Just then, Kumiko calls out to him from behind. She smiles, apologizing for being late, and remarks that he looks very different in his casual clothes compared to his school uniform. Yasutaka feels self-conscious about his outfit, which he bought over New Year's based on recommendations from his sister and Emma. Although Emma had previously critiqued the fit, Kumiko smiles warmly, telling him the look suits him. Even if it is just flattery, the compliment boosts his confidence. Changing the topic, he hands over the promised DVD. When Kumiko asks when she should return it, he tells her to keep it, explaining he burned a separate copy for her. She is pleasantly surprised by his generosity and insists on treating him to a coffee as a thank you. They move to a nearby cafe. After a brief discussion about the band's latest album, which Yasutaka admits isn't quite as good as their older work, Kumiko shifts the conversation to Emma, asking how she is doing at school. Yasutaka replies that she is super popular, but Kumiko sighs, describing her childhood friend as awkward and easily misunderstood. Yasutaka is skeptical, viewing Emma as willful, blunt, and socially calculated. However, Kumiko reveals the context behind that behavior. Emma was targeted by older girls in middle school because popular boys liked her, leading to her being frozen out by her female peers. Hearing this, Yasutaka realizes Emma's current behavior, prioritizing her female friends and keeping boys at a distance, is likely a defense mechanism born from those bitter memories. Kumiko suggests that having a steady, reliable guy like Yasutaka around is good for Emma, but he quickly shuts that idea down. He clarifies that they barely interact at school and only walk home together on Wednesdays due to their cram school schedules aligning, and even that routine was broken last week when she didn't show up. He explains the strict social hierarchy to Kumiko. Emma is in the top group, while he is at the bottom, making them worlds apart. Kumiko claims ignorance of such dynamics, noting she attends an all-girls school. Yasutaka privately suspects that even all-girls schools have hierarchies. If she doesn't notice them, she is likely at the top of the pecking order herself. Suddenly, Kumiko asks if he is currently seeing anyone. Yasutaka blushes and immediately denies it, self-deprecatingly claiming that a guy with no looks and no real selling points like him could never date a girl. Yasutaka laments his lack of popularity, admitting to himself that while he would love to date and have fun, it feels impossible given his current status. Kumiko listens, noting that he clearly doesn't dislike girls. She then makes a bold move, placing her hand directly over his and asking if he wants her to be his girlfriend. Yasutaka internally panics. He analyzes the situation rapidly. They just met, but their hobbies and personalities click perfectly. However, he worries that a cute girl like her could easily find a guy with much higher specs than him. His thoughts immediately drift to Emma. He fears that if he dates Kumiko, Emma might stop speaking to him entirely. He tries to rationalize that Emma's opinion shouldn't matter since he used to find her unpleasant, yet he remains deeply confused. Why is he hesitating for a girl he only sees for 30 minutes a week? Just as he spirals, Kumiko withdraws her hand, revealing she was just kidding. Before Yasutaka can recover, she adds another tease, claiming she isn't actually a girl. When he freaks out again, she laughs and clarifies that that was also a joke. Yasutaka realizes that Kumiko is exhausting in an entirely different way than Emma. Kumiko then observes that his flustered reaction was identical to Emma's. She explains that after Yasutaka got off the train the other day, she asked Emma if he had a girlfriend. When Emma denied it, Kumiko jokingly suggested she might date him herself. In response, Emma made a blatantly displeased face. Yasutaka argues that his reaction was shock, implying Emma's reaction suggests she didn't want anyone taking him away. Kumiko agrees, noting the change in behavior. She recalls that in middle school, Emma used to eagerly push her toward guys she was rumored with, telling her to hurry up and get together. Yet with Yasutaka, she is protective. Yasutaka wonders if Emma simply hates the idea of him dating her friend, but reasons that if she truly disliked him, she wouldn't walk home with him every Wednesday. The only logical conclusion is that Emma might actually have feelings for him. Kumiko ends the thought by challenging his perspective. While he believes Emma lives in a totally different world, she believes the two of them are actually birds of a feather. Yasutaka reflects on Kumiko's comment about being birds of a feather with Emma. He admits that while he and Emma are opposites in looks and habits, conversation flows weirdly easily between them. He feels that despite their rocky history, they might click deep down. He hopes that perhaps Kumiko, as her friend, understands the source of the heartbreaking sadness he sometimes glimpses in Emma's eyes. Realizing it is getting late, they leave the cafe, marking the end of Yasutaka's first ever date. Kumiko mentions she plans to cut her hair even shorter soon. As she flips her hair back, Yasutaka notices her slender neck and recalls her earlier joke about being his girlfriend. He flushes, admitting to himself that if she had been serious, he would have happily agreed. They exchange thanks for the coffee and the DVD, promising to attend a live concert together in the future, a prospect that excites Yasutaka, who usually attends shows alone. Kumiko also promises to visit his school festival next week to see the local Geography Research Club exhibit, genuinely thinking it sounds cool. Before parting ways, Kumiko gives him a confidence boost, insisting that he actually garners a normal amount of attention from girls. She winks, teasingly warning him not to flirt too much or Emma will get worried. Yasutaka dismisses the warning, doubting Emma would care unless he was dating her friend, completely missing the irony that he just went on a date with exactly that person. The following Thursday, Emma is running late at school after getting stuck asking a teacher to explain complex English grammar rules. By the time she is free, she realizes she has missed Yasutaka, who likely went home already. She sighs, realizing the last real conversation she had about him was with Kumiko the previous week. In a flashback to that train ride, Kumiko had expressed jealousy over co-ed schools and bluntly asked if Ima was dating Yasutaka. Ima denied it so loudly that other passengers stared. Flustered, she insisted there was no way she would date a brusque, spacey otaku like him, claiming she prefers calm, dependable, older men. However, internally, she felt conflicted, wishing he would show a bit more attachment to her. Kumiko pressed on, asking if Yasutaka had a girlfriend. Emma assured her he didn't, describing him as unpopular, plain, and gloomy. Despite her harsh words, she privately acknowledged that he is actually a decent, gutsy guy who stood up for a younger student. Hearing he was single, Kumiko declared that she might ask him to be her girlfriend next time she saw him. Emma panicked, trying to dissuade her friend by emphasizing his otaku nature. To her dismay, Kumiko countered that he is exactly her type because he seems genuinely kind. Emma realized with a sinking heart that she had no right to block her friend's happiness. However, as she listed Yasutaka's traits in her mind, his kindness, his gentleness, and their shared taste in music, she came to a terrifying conclusion. Yasutaka and Kumiko are actually a perfect match. The realization that they might start dating hits her hard, and she desperately hopes Kumiko's interest is just a passing phase. On Saturday, Emma mopes around the house, her mood visibly damp. Her sister notices the gloominess, pointing out that Emma has been acting off since Wednesday. Emma deflects, claiming her head still hurts a bit, but insisting she will be fine after taking some medicine. Her sister offers to stay close in case she needs anything, but Emma retreats to her room, ostensibly to study. However, focusing on her textbooks proves impossible. Emma is acutely aware that today is the day Yasutaka is meeting Kumiko to exchange the DVD. She catches herself glancing at the clock, imagining them together right now. She feels helpless, unable to ask him about it since they barely speak at school anyway. Just as she tries to force herself to concentrate, her phone buzzes with a message from Kumiko. Attached is a photo of Yasutaka in his casual clothes, accompanied by a text praising his surprisingly stylish look and asking Emma to reply soon. Emma looks at the picture and grumbles internally. She already knew he wasn't actually lame. She realizes that with a little effort, he could easily be popular, a thought that annoys her more than it should. Her mind spirals, wondering if Kumiko has already confessed to him. Overwhelmed by jealousy and anxiety, Emma abandons her studies entirely and buries herself in bed, trying to sleep the feelings away. Days pass without a word from either of them regarding the date, leading Emma to suspect they are hiding something from her. By the time Wednesday arrives, she heads to the station with low expectations, convincing herself Yasutaka won't be there. She resigns herself to a lonely commute and stops by a vending machine to buy some juice. Suddenly, Yasutaka calls out to her from behind. He walks over, admitting he thought she wasn't coming. Emma is startled to see him waiting, especially since they never made an explicit promise to meet. He asks about her absence the previous week, and Emma lies, claiming she stayed home because she wasn't feeling well. Yasutaka expresses relief that she is recovered, but his concern only frustrates her further. She wonders why, if he was so worried, he didn't just speak to her at school where he saw her every day. They sit on the bench to wait for the train. The silence stretches between them, and Emma waits for him to bring up the weekend. When he remains quiet, she decides she can't handle the suspense any longer. She breaks the silence, asking for confirmation that he met with Kumiko on Saturday. Yasutaka smiles, asking if Kumiko already told her, which Emma interprets as a sign that he isn't trying to hide anything after all. Emma presses for details about the meeting, asking how it went. Yasutaka praises Kumiko as a ridiculously good person who spent most of the time worrying about Emma. Frustrated by his deflection, Emma thinks to herself that she knows Kumiko's character better than anyone. What she wants to know is what happened between the two of them. She bluntly demands to know if they are dating. Yasutaka struggles to suppress a laugh, raising his eyebrows at the accusation. He tells her she clearly cannot read a normie brain. There is no way a cool girl like Kumiko would give a guy like him the time of day. He explains they simply handed over the DVD, chatted briefly, and split up so Kumiko could get a haircut. Emma is confused, noting that Kumiko's hair wasn't that long to begin with, but she is more focused on Yasutaka's self-deprecation. She thinks he isn't nearly as inferior as he believes. Yasutaka then shares that Kumiko even joked about being interested in girls during their meeting. He admits he almost believed her for a second, causing Emma to giggle and agree that their friend has a wicked sense of humor. The train arrives and they board together. Yasutaka mentions that Kumiko plans to visit the culture festival next week. Emma claims she hasn't heard about this yet, suggesting Kumiko might just be killing time since she lives nearby. Yasutaka disagrees, insisting that Kumiko spent their entire conversation talking about Emma, proving how much she loves her best friend. Ama dismisses the comment externally, but privately, she studies Yasutaka's profile. She notes his sharp jawline, clear skin, and defined brows, observing how his eyes vanish when he smiles. She concludes that while he looks plain and a bit dowdy now, simply taming his wavy hair would make him quite popular. She realizes this is exactly why he is Kumiko's type. The thought of confessing to him seems impossible, but she worries that if someone else made a move, she would lose him. Even the close call with her beloved Kumiko was rough. She reflects on how mysterious he is, an introvert with no sense of personal distance who still thinks her insistence on him getting a phone is just a sales pitch for her family's business. Feigning tiredness, she announces she is going to nap. Yasutaka agrees and puts on his earphones. Ima closes her eyes, feeling a wave of relief that he didn't end up with Kumiko. She gently rests her head on his shoulder, wishing to stay like this a little longer. She resolves that next time, she will finally give that band Skosho a listen. On Sunday, the second day of the school cultural festival begins. Unlike the first day, the campus is now open to the public. While most seniors, including those in Class F, skip the event to study for upcoming exams, Yasutaka honors his commitment to the local geography research club. After a brief exchange with Katsuya, he heads to the club room to begin his shift. Upon his arrival, the energetic juniors greet him and hand him a club shirt to wear. They open a large box to reveal the star of their promotion strategy, a full-body costume of the prefecture's mascot, Chiba-kun. Since the suit is fairly small, a shorter junior boy volunteers to wear it. Once suited up, the group heads outside to generate hype. The plan works immediately. Children swarm the red mascot, allowing Yasutaka to easily distribute flyers and direct visitors to their exhibit on the 4th floor. As the junior steps out of the mascot suit, Yasutaka gets ready to run the booth. The junior comments humorously about how busy it is working around so many visitors. Just then, Kumiko approaches him. She compliments the tasteful layout of the flyer, but Yasutaka focuses on her appearance, noticing she has cut her bangs. He tells her the new hairstyle looks really good. Smiling, Kumiko hands him a DVD as a return gift for the concert footage he gave her earlier. She explains it contains rare, indie-era recordings of their favorite band, Skosho, and says she felt moved to repay his kindness. Suddenly, Ama arrives, hugging Kumiko from behind and offering her cotton candy as an apology for the wait. Kumiko admits she is nervous entering Nansu High for the first time, explaining that last year's festival dates overlapped with her own school's events. Ama's attention quickly shifts to the mascot waving at them. She gushes over how cute Chiba-kun is, referencing its high ranking in the Yuruchara Grand Prix. She whispers to Yasutaka, asking who is inside the suit. Yasutaka deadpans that there is no person inside. It is just Chiba-kun. Ama is momentarily confused before realizing he is teasing her about the rotation of students inside the costume. They decide to take a commemorative photo, and Yasutaka snaps a picture of the two girls posing with the mascot. Kumiko promises to come check out Yasutaka's exhibit later, but Ama hurriedly drags her away, insisting they need to catch an event starting in the gym. Once they leave, the junior inside the mascot suit voices his jealousy, envious that Yasutaka is close to such high-level beauties. Yasutaka explains they are just classmates and a friend, though he internally sympathizes with the introvert's reaction to being hugged by cute girls. They return to the club room to switch shifts. As the exhausted junior steps out of the suit, Yasutaka prepares to man the booth. A female junior named Tamura steps up, offering to work the shift alongside him.
Here I am, know it's been a while. I was in denial about my love. Here I stand, I know I walked away.